Perfect. Hey guys, it's Cardo. I'm going to be showing you guys how exactly I do an oil change on my Kranzle 1322TS pressure washer. And just a big disclaimer, what I'm about to show you guys right here is not the right way, but neither is the wrong way. I'm just simply showing you guys what I do when I want to do an oil change on my pressure washer using the tools readily available to me. And of course, all the resources that I use to make this video, I'll be linking it down below in the description for you guys to check out in case you have a machine like this one or similar from Kranzle, and in case you want to try out some different tips and tricks when you want to perform it yourself. Satisfying visuals paired with some narrative commentary, so let's get started. I've owned my Kranzle 1322TS pressure washer for about 2 years now, and this will be its 4th oil change and still currently using it. I was going to service it and call it a day, but thought, hey, why not make a video about it? After all, when I looked up for oil change videos on this machine in particular, there were not that many out there. So I'm glad to document this for you guys to witness in case anyone would like to use this for any future reference. Now, a big disclaimer, this is not a tutorial video. I am simply showing you my procedure on how I would do it. Worry not, all resources that I had used, such as oil types, tips, and other information, I will link it down below in case you guys have any questions, because I am not a mechanic and unfortunately I cannot answer everyone's questions for liability reasons. I will also make sure to list any products that I've used down below in case you would like to pick up anything as shown in this video. So enough talk, and let's get on with the show. Please bear with me as I have no mechanical knowledge or the terminology on pressure washers or cars, so get ready for some cringy vague descriptions that I will try my best to describe. Now, to drain the oil of this 1322TS, it is right in the center, just below the pump mechanism, and as you can see, it is low to the ground and would make it difficult to insert a tool. So from here, I would have to get creative on how I would raise this machine to get better access. I do not have a fancy garage workbench, nor do I have fancy tools for the job. I am simply working with what I got as someone who does not do mechanical work. And while this is not pretty by no means, this is still functional to perform the job properly. Functionality over flash, am I right? So after raising it about a foot or two, I now have better clearance to insert a tool and to drain the fluid accordingly. Before unscrewing the drain, I would need to open the fill port to release the built-up pressure from inside the machine after months of use. So I got my adjustable wrench, and as I was unscrewing it, I noticed that there was a hissing sound coming from the plug, so I zoomed in to show you guys what exactly I was talking about. You can see some air bubbles popping off, which is an indicator that there was some pressure buildup from inside. So to avoid potential splashback, I removed the bolt slowly while covering it in some paper towels, which, surprisingly, nothing had happened. So from here I just put it to the side and clean it separately. Now, new motor oil has a brown coffee color to it, so seeing this all white cream slush is an indicator that it is indeed time for service. From here I just used paper towels, roll them up, and wipe away all of the white slush for a somewhat more presentable state, and to install it after service had been complete. It's not perfect, but I think this will be fine. It was then time to drain the machine. After messing with a couple of sockets to see which would fit, I only do this every couple of months, so I won't remember off the top of my head. I used a 13mm socket as it fits snugly to the drain plug. Now, my machine has a lot of battle scars, and the bolt unfortunately had been scraped several times, making it difficult for the socket to get a grip and to release. So I got my adjustable wrench, and sure enough, it broke loose, to which I then swapped back to the socket to loosen even more. After loosening the drain bolt just enough to be unscrewed by hand, from here I carefully removed it while holding a clear cup to collect all of the waste oil. The first cup pretty much filled up right away with the rotten sour cream looking oil, and after a couple more drops I swapped the cup with a new one, and you will see why shortly. From here I had just wait a couple of minutes until the machine was fully drained. While the machine was draining, I checked the drain bolt, and sure enough it had seen better days. So with several towels, I tried my best to wipe away all of the slush as much as I could. The threads looked fine, the washer seemed flush, and while the hex top is scraped to absolute oblivion, it was still working for the tools, so no need to replace it anytime soon with proper care. Again, I am not seeking perfection, just enough for me to feel comfortable enough to put it back in the machine for its next several months of hard-working action. Now, it had been dripping for several minutes, and I am still not done. I had to remove and clean the see-through port of the machine, which is this clear hex plug so you can see the color and condition of your oil at a glance. one good tilt of the machine, I confirmed that there was not a significant amount of oil left that would leak from the other end. So from here, I just unscrewed it and cleaned out everything for a more presentable and acceptable level of clean. I had to use several paper towels for this because the plug is right in the middle of the oil reservoir, so naturally all of the contamination would be there. Same thing can be said for the threaded area, so I just jammed in some paper towels to soak up all of the rotten sour cream looking gunk. The rubber seal looked perfectly fine with no signs of tearing or warping, so no need to replace it. I did not have an electric wrench to measure how much I should torque it down, so I used the classic "you know it when you feel it" technique until I was sure enough that it had been properly sealed. From there, I noticed that the oil drain port had stopped leaking, so it was then time to move on to the next step, which is to fill it up with new oil. Before adding anything to the oil reservoir, I needed to flush the old oil from within the machine that couldn't drip away, so I would need to pour some fresh oil so it can drip the old out on the other end. Here I used the same cup collector from earlier and raised it higher with several boxes to avoid making a mess from the drips. This looks super janky, but again, this is what I have, man. I'm not going to spend on fancy tools, only going to use what is functional. Not pretty, but functional. The cup was close enough to the port to collect all of the nasty gunk that would be flushed out, so from here I just had to pour some fresh oil. The oil that I am using is 15W40, and this was recommended to me by Obsessed Garage. You could use Kranzle's motor oil, but this also works since I had already done 3 oil changes on this, or approximately 200 hours with this machine, and never had an issue. So from here I poured a small amount in a measurement cup and filled the machine until some oil was leaking. This new oil has a coffee brown color to it, so I kept flushing until the other end was consistently brown. This step is important because I want the least amount of old oil contaminating the fresh oil, so I had to pour this slowly to make sure the machine was flushed thoroughly. After the first pour, I let it sit for a couple of minutes to drain once more until it was ready to be filled completely. A few minutes passed and it was then ready to seal the drain and fill the machine completely. I wipe away any remaining drips with the same paper towel and then screwed in the plug by hand until it was snug. I grabbed my socket afterwards and torqued it until I was comfortable enough to confirm that it had a proper seal. Once the plug had been installed, it was then time to add the new oil. According to the instructions, I had to pour 250 milliliters of fresh oil into a pouring cup, and just for comparison, I brought the old oil in the shot so you could see the difference. And by difference, holy hell was it quite obvious. The fresh oil is clean and transparent, while the old one is just mayonnaise. It doesn't look very sightly at all. It was satisfying to see this, not going to lie. But back to the point. From here, I just poured the oil in, pretty straightforward, just a bit here and there, and tilted the machine on each side to make sure that the oil covers every section from within and to push the air out from the insert port. As I had poured more, I could see through the clear plug that the machine was filling up slowly but surely. From here, I simply installed the red plastic plug on top until it had a snug fit. Not overly torqued, and neither too loose, but just right. And that pretty much concludes my procedure on performing a Kranzle 1322TS oil change. There really is not much to this, and while I could have just done this off camera, I thought it would serve as entertaining content, so why not? I was not done just yet. I still need to do a test run to see that the machine was working properly. So in a janky procedure, I set up my water system, plugged in the hoses, and connected the machine to a power source. I typically use DI water at the end of every rinse, not just to avoid water spots on the car, but to also protect my Kranzle from potential calcium buildup from forming within the machine. I once had a Greenworks pressure washer that unfortunately could not survive the bombardment of hard water being injected into the pump. So to avoid an incident like that and to protect my investment, I used DI water as a safety measure. Turning on my machine, I let it run for a second to push all of the air out and to let it settle with the new oil being used. There were a couple of hiccups, but that is to be expected as the oil runs through the motor, and eventually it settled down and ran perfectly fine afterwards. As a final precaution, I double checked that the pressure was working and not jumping around, and yes, it had worked perfectly fine, so no need to take additional steps. And there you guys go, my full procedure on how I would perform an oil change on my Kranzle 1322TS. Again, this is not a tutorial, I am simply showing you my procedure and what works best for me.
I used information and tips directly from Obsessed Garage, so I will make sure to link some helpful guides in the description as well as product links for you guys to check out. This is my 4th oil change after 2 years and about 200 hours of usage, and it works perfectly fine like on day 1. I may do another long-term video like this later, so make sure to let me know in the comment section below if you are interested in that. So that pretty much concludes everything. If you have found this video helpful, make sure to leave a like, subscribe down below for more future content like this down the road, and make sure to hit that bell icon so that way you're notified with every video that I upload. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Have a good time.